Tonight on The Computer History Museum presents Revolutionaries.
Building things is part and parcel of research. So everything we do, you'll have something built in a year, and I want something built in the second year. And it may not be awesome, and it may not be the thing we want, but I actually think your research gets better.
In its 55-year history, DARPA has produced hundreds of technology breakthroughs for the Pentagon. Tonight, Innovation Director Dan Kaufman talks about DARPA's storied past and its vision for the future with John Markoff of the New York Times. Major funding for Revolutionaries is provided by the Intel Corporation.
This is actually a great time to talk about DARPA. There's a new director who will take over in a week, who actually comes from Silicon Valley most recently. She's had a previous tour at DARPA, Arati Prabhakar. And the agency's also been in the news. I'm not sure if you've followed this, but there's been a minor kerfuffle in the last couple of days because a columnist in the Wall Street Journal decided that DARPA really doesn't have anything to do with the network that took its name, the ARPANET. And if you guys didn't see this column by Gordon Kravitz in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, I can sum it up. Basically, he argues that governments don't invent internets, people invent internets. And we'll get back to that.
Okay.
But I don't want to start there. I want to start with how you got to DARPA, because my sense, as I get to know you more, it makes a little more sense, but my sense is you're not the sort of standard cookie-cutter DARPA official.
No, you can stop it, and that's not standard cookie cutter or anything.
So how'd you get there?
Yeah, it was actually very strange. You know, as John had said, you know, I'd been at DreamWorks, and then I started my own video game company. It's an interesting thing, try to do that in France. 35-hour work week, it's all interesting. And we went public, and I retired, because that's what you think of. You know, when you think, well, that's right, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to retire.
What year was that?
Let's see, it would have been like 2000, 99, right around there. So my goal was to retire at 35. It was 38. And I turned to my wife one day, and she looked at me, and she said, so retired doesn't mean you stay at home all day, right? And I took the hint, and so I started figuring out what I wanted to do. And I was going to set up a business, and it was called Dan's Not at Home. And I started doing that. I did some interim CEO jobs. I put together some management teams, you know, going back to sort of my roots, working with a lot of venture capitalists and the like. And 9/11 happened, and it hit me profoundly. I feel that I've lived incredibly well off this country. My family's lived incredibly well off this country, and giving something back seems like a reasonable thing to do. Except, I don't know if you've ever tried to deal with the government, that's a great sentiment. I had no idea how to do this. So I went to Starbucks like any good, you know, cheap guy, and I went to Barnes & Noble, and I went through a government jobs book. And I decided I'd be an FBI agent. I decided, yes, that was my job, and I would track down serial killers, because they think they're smart, and I thought, me and a bunch of data and a computer, please. They're not that good, we'll get them. And I applied, and they told me I was too old. And I was like, but what about the part where I'll work for free, you know? No interest. And through a very strange set of circumstances, I ended up, Senator D. Concini introduced me to the director of DARPA. And he said, well, what do you think the future is? And I was like, the first thing is I should find out what DARPA is,
Was that Tony Tether?
That was Tony Tether.
Okay.
And we were talking, and he said, so what are you going to go do? And I said, I'm going back to Microsoft. I have this idea for a sim builder, right? So the idea was very simple. I wanted to say, as Word is to a document, as PowerPoint is to slides, I want to make a simulation builder. I think that's the future. We all like visualization, but I want to put simulation in the hands of everybody, and it'd be cool. And it went all the way up to Bill, because I used to work for him. And Dr. Tether turned over to me, and he said, here's a thought. Why don't you do something for your country, you slug? And that was a compelling argument. And I said, well, I guess so. And in only his inimitable fan, he reached over and went, great, see you Monday. And I had to go home and explain to my wife and children.
Which was on the West Coast?
Yeah, I had to explain. I said, hey, so what do you think about Washington, D.C.? And she said, well, it sounds lovely. We've never been there. I said, well, we will be there soon. And that is literally how a strange video game guy ends up in the middle of DARPA.
But you weren't entirely unprepared. I mean, when I first saw your resume, I mean, you were a Brobeck sort of Silicon Valley attorney.
Yeah.
I mean, so where's the technology come in?
So I've always been a technology geek. I've always been a programmer. I love programming. I'm just crappy at it. I went to UC San Diego. I got to study Pascal with Ken Bowles. I mean, it was the greatest thing in the world. There's labs with Apple IIs in there and VAX PDP-11s. I know I'm dating myself, but for those of you, that was the coolest thing. And I could do all this. And one of my advisors came over one day and he said, oh, business law is really the way to get ahead. And I always thought that was code for, stop coding. Somebody once described, I wrote a tic-tac-toe game, and they said, Dan doesn't understand recursion. It's 27 arrays. And it was kind of, all right, it's a nerd joke, but for the 20 of you, it was good. And so I did, and I got the greatest thing in the world. I got this incredible job at Brobeck. Silicon Valley is booming. I'm 28, 29 years old, and I am meeting with John Scully talking about a multimedia box. I'm meeting with Brandon Tartikoff talking about putting a virtual reality Star Trek thing in. I'm meeting with Jerry Kaplan and Vern Rayburn on Go and Slate, which was tablet computing. People always say you're too early. No kidding, they were too early, but they had nailed it. Jim Clark, right? I worked on Netscape before Netscape was ever known. Cisco before it was public. It was just a blast.
But did Dr. Tether see in you, did he want a simulation tool? Is that, I mean, you came, did he see you as the video game guy and that you could bring this technology? So you were sort of technology transfer in.
Yeah, I think he wanted, he was fascinated with simulation. We spend billions of dollars a year in the military, and I don't think we're getting the bang for the buck, so he wanted that solved. And two, I think he just thought it was cool to have somebody coming from Microsoft because that was sort of a broader and different place, a different culture.
So you also, so after Brobeck, you helped Microsoft and DreamWorks, tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, I founded the whole thing, so I guess that helps. Not Microsoft and DreamWorks, otherwise I'd be way too rich to be in this room. They wanted to form a game company, and the idea was take the creativity of Spielberg and the software sort of processes of Microsoft, no snarky comments, put them together and get games come out on time. We started in the Oakwood Apartments. It was 3 of us, and then we built to 8, and then we built a bunch of games. Probably the most famous became Medal of Honor, and then eventually that team went on to form the Xbox. So,
so are you a gamer?
I'm a huge gamer, yeah.
So even so,
and so Stephen, right? So that was bonding. So in fact, it's very odd, right? So first meeting with Steven Spielberg, I still remember sitting in this room, and it was he and me. He was doing a new Jurassic Park, and Walter Parks and Laurie McDonald, and all I can think of, I have this surreal experience. You ever have this? I'm in this room meeting with Steven Spielberg. This is awesome. I should probably pay attention to what they're saying. But I don't know, it's Steven. And then I heard this question, and I thought, whoa, Steven Spielberg's asking me a question. That's awesome. Oh, crap, I should probably answer that question. That was pretty much how it went for the first 6 months.
So now, fast forward, you came to DARPA, and you basically had, is it right to say 2 tours of duty?
Yeah.
Or is that did you leave, or did you just?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I started off as a program manager. So DARPA works, there's the director, the big boss, Arthi, who could come in. And then there's office directors. There's 5 offices. Our budget, to give you an idea, it's roughly $3 billion a year. So each office, you can do the math, about $500-600 million. And then under that are the program managers. And total program managers is about 100. So I came in as a program manager, ran a couple of programs. I did one thing we'll show here today, and then a sniper scope that was on future weapons, so that was kind of cool, if you're into sniper scopes. And then I left, and they asked me to come back and run the whole software office. So I own everything from cyber offense and defense to big data. Before it was such a fad, I'm going to call it something else now, and social media, all that stuff.
And how much probably made the mistake of looking at your budget for 2013 a little bit, and I could have used some help in trying to understand it. But one thing I noticed is, the number that is associated with basic research is relatively small. I mean, I counted about 1/3 billion basic research, 1.2 million applied research, and 1.1 million advanced technology development. Basic research. In 1973, there was this thing called the Mansfield Amendment, and it sort of pushed you guys out of basic. You're supposed to do things that are just military applications. And yet there is some basic money, and the country is not spending on basic research, either in the private sector or in the public sector, the way it once did. So how do I interpret this $300 million?
So we have a big push, actually, in basic research. I think the DARPA I think we have a different view of it, and it's certainly one I hold, and I drive hard in my office, which is I almost think they're false distinctions, right? So one of the things I tell all our performers is, If it's not world-changing and sort of DARPA-worthy, which really means basic research, then I'm not interested. But if what I get out of that is a whole bunch of papers, I don't understand how I go to some guy who's putting his life on the line for our country in Afghanistan and go, here's this awesome cover of Nature. You know, they're like, thanks. So what we do is, I don't know if you've heard this a lot, but you know, we talk about sort of Pascal's quadrant, right? So the idea is, I'm very interested exactly where basic science meets a fundamental product. So what we'll tend to do is, I'll have my program managers, the programs are usually like 3 years, 4 years, something like that. And so what's the dream goal where we need researchers? And we fund basic research, universities, no publication restriction, and do all that. But I want to know what the product is, because I think it actually makes research better. Building things is actually I believe, is part and parcel of research. So everything we do, you'll have something built in a year, and I want something built in the second year, and something built in the third year. And it may not be awesome, and it may not be the thing we want, but I actually think your research gets better. Otherwise, you can sort of sit back and you feel very happy in the lab, but you got to take your baby out and show it to people. And it's really scary, right? Because sometimes people look and they go, well, you know, they say no baby's ugly, but, you know, you've done it. So that happens, but I think we need it.
And what about time horizons for research? I mean, one of the things about basic research and for the kind of research that goes on in the academy is that you have these things that are not tied to quarterly results. Mm-hmm. But in the defense industrial community, for example, often everything is tied to quarterly. I mean, so how do you balance short-term versus long-term?
So the cool thing is we don't live inside the requirements of the DoD. So meaning in the sense of, you know, where the military specifies what you want. We're really a blue sky organization. We can create whatever we think is surprise. So I don't think innovation dovetails to a timeline. I think it's really false. You know, well, great innovation will take 4 years, or it'll take 90 days. I don't care. So my project span. I have something called Cyber Fast Track, where I go from a proposal to a contract in 10 days in the US government, which is like already like DARPA worthy. And in the first 3 months, I've released 30 products. That's on one hand. On the other, we're building a clean slate operating system initiative. You know, if that thing, you know, we have some early prototypes, but if that's really cool in 6 years, I will be stunned and pleased.
So your point about small agile projects that fail early.
Yeah.
When this hacker by the name of Mudge came with a lot of, you know, there was a lot of publicity around his arrival. Peter Zatko. He was supposed to sort of create a cluster of small projects. Yeah. Has that happened?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's all out there. In fact,
Cyber is yours, right?
That's mine. Yeah. So we released this. It took us a year to do this. It's called, so we've got a bunch of small things, but this one I'm extremely proud of. We went out to the hacker community and I said, so why do you not, you know, compete? Why don't you send products in to the government? And, you know, you would think, oh, with this hacker community, they don't like the government and, you know, you're all evil and stuff. That's not the case at all. Lots of them are, you know, they want to help, and they just told me the truth. They went, first of all, your IP rights are stupid. I'm not giving up all this IP rights for a stupid grant. Second of all, dude, I can't figure out the paperwork. It's going to take me 9 months to get a contract for $100,000. I can just walk down the street and someone will give me $500,000. It's like, that's pretty compelling, right? So you're like, well, okay. So I asked him, I said, what if we fix this? Mudge and I sat down with everybody. We went around. Said, what if we fix this? If we fix it, would you come? And they said yes, and maybe I'm a sap, but I believe them. And so we made the following promise. We would put it out that they can own their IP. We'll just get the government rights, you know, for the government stuff, but they can own it, build companies, and that we would go from contract proposal in to contract done in 10 days, and the average period of performance would be 90 days. And we have, I actually have the book. I should have brought it, but I'll show you. I'll send you a copy. We have the first 30 products. They're all done. They're transitioned out to NSA, CIA, all sorts of places. The next book, every quarter, you're going to get another book of 30 programs. And it's great. In fact, I just dropped his name, but the guy who got in trouble from Apple, the big fuzzer, his name will come back to me. But right, so basically what he did was very clever. He took an app. Apple didn't think it was clever, but he took an app, put it in the App Store, got it all checked in. Then he could take out his own app, turn it into malware. He just did it on his own license. He never spread it out. He's a white hat hacker, and showed that it could do to show the vulnerability. Apple got very angry and revoked as I hear the story I've heard, is they revoked his license. So we signed him up on Cyber Fast Track, and he's now building really cool stuff for us. So if you can if you can out Silicon Valley, you know, that's a win.
So one more area, and then it's time for show and tell, I think. But let me just, so there is a general perception, I think probably amongst everybody, that cybersecurity is largely broken.
Yes.
You know, after reporting on it for 30 years, I gave up. I just couldn't take it anymore. After LuzSec and Anonymous, I decided it was time to do something different. But you're in the midst of it. You've taken away this distinction between offense and defense.
Yes.
The U.S. has recently, perhaps, been credited with one of the first uses of offensive cyber weapons. Are we, probably something you can't talk about, are we, well, first of all, let me, with my first point, is it broken? Can it be fixed?
So yes and maybe, and I hope so. And if we don't, we're all in a lot of trouble. So we actually did this. When the director wanted to get into cyber, I looked over the entire portfolio. And I went through, and you've probably seen, there are like millions of these charts, and they're all horrible, right? They basically show spending going like this, this sort of line, and then you show the number of attacks going like this, and you just look at that chart and you go, this is just horrible. Like, literally, at one point I was so depressed, I said, maybe if you stop spending, it'll get better. Like, what do you do?
Test that.
Yeah, it was a test. That did not go over well in the DoD. And so I put a sign on my door. And all my team, Mudge, everyone can tell you, it was literally on my door. It just said, why? That's all it was. And I told them we were not going to spend a single dime, not one dime in cyber. We would pitch no new programs until we understood why. Because obviously spending more money on this incremental stuff is not working. And we dug into it, and I wish I had the slide here, but I can share it with people later. What we did was we did an interesting map. And what we did was we charted sort of the growth of code. So in this case, we did security software from, thousands or hundred thousands of lines up to your Tivolis and, into your tens of millions, 100 millions of lines of code. And then we tracked malware. We took 9,000 copies, 9,000 samples of it, and came out about 125 lines. And I looked at that line and I said, okay, this is a problem. We are divergent with the threat. And it changed the way I looked at cyber, which said, what we have to do is I have to change the game. So how do I get them to play in my game? So we're trying a lot of different things. One thought is, if every computer was different, and not only it was different, it changed over time, then any one attack that got in wouldn't do that. So that all sounds great. And if you think, we took it from biology, right? I mean, when I was little, the chicken pox parties, right? Your parents bring you over, so you get chicken pox, you don't get it again. That violates the Geneva Convention, by the way. So, but they do this, and so you don't get it again. So what if I could do that with computers? So you say that, and then the IT guys look at you like they're going to blow their brains out. They go, look, I can't manage one computer. So then the thought was, well, no, but we could do it at a low level. So one thought is do this at a low level and at a high level. Another one quickly is, what if I move the world into encryption? So what if I said, well, if I could do fully homomorphic encryption, there'll be a lecture later for those of you who want to play. But if I could move into fully homomorphic encryption, then maybe I don't care that my system's compromised. So what you'll see is the bulk of our things are trying to fundamentally change the way the game is played. This you attack, I respond, you attack, I respond. I don't know how much more evidence you need that that's a losing game. So we have to fundamentally change the elements of what we're doing.
We could talk crypto all evening, but I think I'd like you to why don't you walk through some of your projects? We haven't talked about challenges yet, but you're going to talk about challenges, so we can come back and talk about challenges writ large after you. So what have you done?
Sure. So I'll lead off with one thing, because you asked an interesting question. I have a slide for it. Somebody says, why would you leave, Silicon Valley and making good money and go to the government? And when I had a hit product, Nightmare Creature, so just because I love saying this, it was fun, you remember Tipper Gore? She had 5 evil games on the planet. I was number 3. So it was kind of cool. And I remember the team thinking we should have tried harder. We could have moved up. And so I'd get emails, and I'd get notes from people saying, oh, coolest game ever, dude, right? I wish there was more blood. Here's what I'll show you here is a poster I got. This is a product of ours called Transformational Apps, which is a thing which allows the warfighter to write their own apps. It's sort of in theater. And this guy said they dropped us 800 meters away, and if it wasn't for trans apps, we wouldn't have made it to the objective. We were taking fire on the way in. You get one mail like that, man, the whole job's worth it. So that's sort of why we do it. And it was guys like this. In fact, that's why the military guys are here. So I heard that we spent all this money on modeling and simulation. And I thought, okay, I can do this. So what, the Air Force needs a flight simulator? I'm the guy, no problem at all. We'll build this for you. Let's get it done. They had a new model, an A10C. They wanted this up and running. They'd never had in their history a simulation beat the actual airplane. So I built them this, and they thought, ooh, you know, it's all awesome. And I was a hero for 5 minutes. And then an Air Force pilot turned to me and he said, so, this is great. So how do I dial the microphone in? What? He goes, well, you know, I got to get it at 128 megahertz. He'll let me know. And I said, no, you just hit T to talk. And he's like, oh, no. And he went back, and he brought out these 500-page manuals. And he said, this is what it has to be. And so here's the next shot. So I had to model all of this. And all of a sudden, it's like, holy crap, we're not in, you know, video game land anymore, Toto. So what I realized was, games, right, your job is to be entertaining, and we use realism to make it more entertaining. But at the end of the day, if realism sucks and game is fun, then that's what you do. In this case, you're putting people's lives on the line. So this is now used. Every A-10 pilot in the United States Air Force uses this. Every electronic warfare officer uses it. They can run all this stuff. So I built this idea. It was the beginning of the system.
They can simulate an entire mission from...
Everything. They can place enemy things. They can run classified data. We do line of sight. We do the whole thing. So I'm all proud of myself. This took a few years. And, you know, people never forget what DARPA says. This was a horrible lesson, right? So, you know, commercial world, you make promises. Next ad campaign, no one remembers. Here, people write your crap down. So then the military in particular. So I said, oh, it's a sim builder. It'll build everything. And then the Army came by and he went, So I saw this, and I saw you do a Predator, and I saw you do an AC-130. What about the ground guys? It's like, oh, okay. So we can show you this. So we built this up so that, and the idea here was to build Afghanistan so they could do a patrol, run around, see sight lines. You can imagine a kidnapping, what's the right way to go. And I again, you know, I don't know, it's my life, you know, I always say I'm good in short doses. So I'm doing great for 10 minutes. And I said, the stupidest question ever. I said, so how many square blocks do you need? And he looked at me and went, what? Well, 4 blocks. He goes, son, I need 225,000 square miles of Afghanistan. So we built that. We've got there are a bunch of patents and stuff actually going on it. We had to crack and change all new ways to do terrain. So we built that for the ground guys. And so that seemed to be going very well. And I thought, okay, now I'm done. I've got air, I got ground. You know, I did a thing. I did a thing for the SEALs, but it's classified. So just trust me, I can do water. It all seems good. And I thought, I'm done. Then the intelligence agencies came. I think they wanted to break this. They said, well, can we go all the way down to faces? Can we actually do detection deception? So I'm going to show you a little of this. I'm going to give you a warning about it, which is you may not want to know this if you're married. Just a thought for you. So what I'm going to show you here is a little bit of a movie. And this is something we use. The first time she comes up, she'll just say a normal sentence. Then she'll say one. We've slowed it down and greatly exaggerated it. Can you pause it right there? That'd be great. So it'll be greatly exaggerated. She'll smile. Then she'll show you anger. And then she'll show you disgust. But pay attention because there'll be a test later. It's DARPA. There's always a test. What this is showing you here is, and it's probably hard to see, but everything we do has deep science behind it. This is actually, you can move every single muscle and every single bone is completely modeled in the face so that we have ground truth and we can do this. So we'll let her talk.
It was a while ago, so I'm not sure. It was a while ago, so I'm not sure.
Happy.
It was a while ago, so I'm not sure.
Angry.
It was a while ago, so I'm not sure.
Disgust. All right, now we'll pause it here in a sec. All right, so now that you think it all done, now I'm going to play one at actual speed. I will tell you it is one of those 3. And if you're brave, you can write it down on the card, and afterwards we'll let you know. There's no prize. Normally in challenges we give a prize, but at least you can take a shot. So here's what it actually looks like.
It was a while ago, so I'm not sure.
So you can all make your guess. You can discuss afterwards. There's one answer and only one right answer. So at the end of this, so now I thought I really have won. Okay, I've got everything covered. And all these requests came in. It was like we had broken a dam. I was getting simulation requests. And I thought, oh my God, all I've done is I've transported getting rid of the DoD contractors for a bunch of game contractors, and that's never going to scale. So I said, what I have to do is make tools to make this really easy to use so anyone can use it. And so we did, and we worked on these really great tools, and I showed up at Quantico for the Marines. And they showed up with 35 Marines, and I said, this is great, you can build any simulator, but you don't need 35 guys. I said, I only need like 5 of you. You know, 2, 3 C programmers, a guy who knows Max and Maya. And I still remember the Marine looked at me and went, I'm an E2, does that help? This is a private first class for this. And I realized that that is not what simple means. So we went back and designed this thing to make it literally so anyone could do it. We took tools like SketchUp, but now not only can you take SketchUp, but when you drop it into my sim, the AI knows it's there, the collisions are all done, all the physics, everything's done, it's all invisible to you. And this became my real passion, which is I think that we've not tapped the beginning of what humans can do, and I just need technology, and if I can make it that easy, they will explore and do amazing things. So here's some high school students. Do you have a picture of this? This is really cool. This is 2 high school students in one day. This is Charleston, South Carolina. That's their hometown in the upper left. That's what they made in less than a day with the tools. So they can drive around.
One interruption.
Sure.
So going back to your A10 simulator, has there been any blurring between, you know, we've got these drone operators who are flying things every day. Is the line begun to blur?
I think it absolutely is. And in fact, it'll be an interesting question one day, which is, we've always trained, this will hurt my fighter pilot friend. Hi, Colonel Winkler. So, you know, today the UAV pilots go through pilot school, and they're pilots, and they're fit, and they do all this stuff. But you wonder, people who would not have normally done that, but they may be better at that tool. And you know, the dude is not ready to make that move yet, but in my last year or 2 here, I'll push him to do it. So when we talked about the crazy part of technology, so the best thing in the world, if you build a product and people can use it, they will take it and do things with it that you've never imagined. So we released this real-world toolkit to people, and I started seeing all sorts of crazy stuff pop up. The Canadians used it, model part of the Olympics. But then the craziest one was neuroscience. They put it out, and some neuroscientists got a hold of real world, and they were curious about whether they had a lot of theories about the brain and lots of knowledge about the brain. And could they make a complete loop, and you'll see this for the first time, a human brain interacting with a simulation so that if the person is not concentrating anymore, we can trigger an event in the simulation and then give them something to see. So what it's going to do, and I'm going to just walk you through the steps. I'm going to simplify it just to make it quickly. But that's what we're monitoring on him. And in there's some level of knowledge. But the power of software is levels of abstraction, right? It's the ability to take something to a higher level. So if we click on here, we can show low engagement. So what you'll see here on this orange line, you want that orange line to be low, okay? We can show high engagement, which will be this green line. We want that up high, so he's doing a reasonably good job right now. Kind of low, kind of high. Drowsy will just show you that should be red. It's very low, and you know, unless I'm super boring, then that'll be bad. Brain state distraction, where they're actually distracted, and that'll be in the yellow. So I'm going to turn off the yellow and the red, just to make this simpler. So what you're going to notice is, when he's doing a good job, he's going to be in the vehicle here playing real world, driving through an actual little town. And while he's paying attention, he's looking left and right, he's doing a pretty good job. He's keeping the orange line reasonably low and the green line reasonably high. And then you can see the software. It's actually monitoring his brain, and it's flagging. So I just wanted to give you a feel for that. We can kill that. That's probably enough just to show you. But let me give you an idea of why this is cool for the military. 2 really cool stories of this, right? One is, so you know that statement, we're on the same wavelength, right? People say that all the time. Turns out it's true. Okay? You can actually look at groups and watch their brain patterns and actually see groups that are working well together and groups that aren't working well together. Second one, and this is sort of my favorite story, was we were curious about snipers, right? Snipers, great shots, and so when a sniper shoots and they shoot, you know, on target, they have a very tight grouping, right? That just means all the whole bullet holes are in a tight group. And then we took regular military riflemen, and they shoot, and not surprisingly, their grouping is much wider. We hook them up to this, and we said, okay, let's know what the optimal state is for the sniper. Let's get this brainwave. And when the regular rifleman is in that state, we'll send a little biofeedback thing. We'll give a little buzz, and at that point, you should pull the trigger. And they go right down to it. So now if you're wondering out in the audience, like, why do you care other than just the military, here's how you make a lot of money, I'm convinced. We're going to give it to golfers, right? Right? You're up there on that first hole, and like everyone's looking at you, and you're all nervous. You don't know when to swing. Give yourself over to the machine. So I got really turned on by this whole idea of how technology just can make people do things they never knew they could do. But the one problem with real world is you still have to be a subject matter expert. So I made the tool super easy, and you can build an A10, but you got to know about an A10. Or you can do a neuroscience thing, but you got to be a neuroscientist. So in typical DARPA fashion, we asked like really crazy questions. The question became, well, what if you didn't have any subject matter expertise? But humans are inherently, we're creative, and we're inventive, and we're problem solvers. So one of the greatest problems going on right now is this idea of protein design folding. Extremely difficult, and it's fundamental because this is how you're going to get breakthroughs in drugs and therapeutics and understanding diseases. And the problem is you need to be a biochemistry PhD, and we can only produce so many of them. And that's a pretty narrow bandwidth to get them through. And so I was talking with David Baker and Zoran Popovic up at University of Washington, back to helping out universities. And they had this crazy idea that said, well, what if we could take this whole protein design thing, abstract the rules. Again, take the abstraction, turn it into a game. And if you turn it into a game, then we can make anybody do this science. And after the laughing died out, and we pitched it, we did the classic DARPA thing. So DARPA talks about this all the time. We go from impossible to improbable to inevitable. So we said, we're going to build this game, and my headline to Dr. Tether at the time was, I said, housewife in Peoria cures cancer. And, and he funded it, so who knows. So we did. So the first thing was you can never abstract these rules, you can never build a game, and if you built a game, nobody would ever play it, right? So I think I have a shot of the game. So this is one of the first ones we did. At the top is the unfolded structure, so that's not solved. And here at the bottom is it's all solved. So we did that. I expect, I don't know, like fanfares. I must have a very high opinion of myself. I think I have all this love. And people are like, well, yes, they say, but you haven't really done anything of merit. These are just silly proteins. I mean, yes, you can synthesize them, but why haven't you done something real? And you're like, holy crap, it was impossible like a year ago. Give me time. But we did. I don't know if people saw this article, but this was an article in the LA Times where the players of the game actually have begun to, they looked at a retrovirus protease, which is one of the steps to doing AIDS. And I love this little thing on the bottom. I don't know if people in the back can read it, but it says, the next time someone tells you that playing video games is a waste of time, feel free to bring this up. So it's just, to me, it's this wonderful thing of, you can tap into humans to do all sorts of stuff, and technology is your friend.
And how this pattern recognition capacity you're tapping into, how generalizable do you think it is?
So, all right, so this is the coolest thing about going from impossible to so we say impossible, improbable, inevitable. So then we show this, and now everyone comes up, can you fold it? It's become a verb. So I think it would apply to a ton of things. I think it would apply to everything. We're talking about archaeological reconstruction, right? What if I get the whole crowd to go put all these pieces together instead of that one guy, who's posting? What about packing? So this sounds silly, but literally we could save billions of dollars in the military by packing these jets more efficiently. So rather than doing that, why don't I turn it into a Tetris game, put it out to the crowd, have everyone do it? I could give you the exact size, weight, and shape of it, and I'll give you $50, man. If you save 10%, you're in. So you can do a lot. And then the last one was, Zoran and I talked about where could you extend it the most, and one was education. So I think it's one of the most important things we have. I need to grow more program managers, and they got to come out of somewhere. And we did a lot of STEM education work at DARPA, but it frustrated me because a lot of it felt very much like charity. And it's not that charity is a bad thing, but it was just giving money to things. But it didn't feel DARPA-like. DARPA should be a science project. Like, what is the science of learning? What can we do? And so one of the things that we did was we built a game, and it's called Engage, which to teach kids fractions. And you can go online, we'll give you the site later, and you can go play this. And the coolest thing about this is, let me take a step back. So think about this. Everyone's had a great teacher, right? Everybody's had a great teacher. And what is that great teacher? That great teacher moment is when you totally didn't understand something, and they came to you and they showed it to you in a different way, and you had that aha moment. And the question is, why does not every kid in the world deserve that experience? Right? Why can't I make teachers be able to do that? And the answer is because classrooms are big and you're in a big bell curve. And if you're not in the bell curve, it's not for you. So to heck with that. So we built this game called Engage for fractions. We have a new one too. And the idea is the game changes as the student moves on. So we actually watch. We're actually monitoring them. We watch all the things. We see where they get stuck, where they get frustrated. We figure out the groups. We see, oh, kids who've gotten stuck here often do better there, and without them ever seeing it. So everybody gets a private curriculum. They all get to see it. They all get to progress at their own rate. we're going to feed that to the teacher so the teacher now can really do the teaching. Instead of just lecturing at you, right, which feels very 1950s, I picture them walking around, and they actually have 30 individual students, and they can actually sit down, which is what they want to do, and get each kid to have that amazing moment.
So, and this has been done for you as a DARPA project?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, the early experience of the first, I think they're called MOOCs, massively online classrooms.
Yes.
Their biggest problem is completion. You know, I believe that the Norvig Thrun class was probably the highest completion rate that these big classes have had. They have this huge fall-off problem. Do you think you've solved it?
Well, I think there's two things that go on, right? So I think when you look at learning, and one of the things we talk a lot about is, I think you do need to look at whole of person, right? So you can get the MIT lectures, and I do, right, because they're awesome. You can watch them. But, you know, a lot of what you learn in college is what happens in the dorm room and what happens at the lecture hall and what happens, you know, playing football with your friends and that experience. So I think we need both. So I think classrooms need to change and to evolve, and this is technology to help us move into it. I don't think, you know, if you think about it, original media always does this, right? So, you know, the first TV is, let's take a play, and then we'll show it on TV, and everyone goes, oh, TV sucks. You're like, no, you just haven't created anything for it. And so I think that's the problem. So the reason you have a drop-off is we've not made it compelling, but that's okay, it's early days. But I hope to have a thing where it grows with you the whole time.
Okay. Now, we're talking about crowdsourced and pattern recognition, but you had this other project which called Shredder, was it?
Oh, yeah.
Which I think used algorithms rather than human pattern recognition, right?
We did. I'm standing on the corner going to Starbucks, and there's this plastic bag that comes out, clear plastic bag with shredded paper in it. And I just made a snarky comment because it's me. I said, oh, thank God the launch codes aren't in there. And the security guards, who have no sense of humor, said, sir, you know, this is safe information. I said, oh, well, I'm just joking. I assume it's unclassified. No, it's classified information. And I had that Scooby-Doo moment, like, where? Like, really? No one, like, comes and puts it back together? No, it's impossible. We know it's been told by the government you can't put it together, you know, what's some three-letter agency? And I thought, what a great moment. So I turned to the interns. I said, okay, the coolest thing about DARPA is you have the right to not believe things. You have the right to challenge things. It's okay. It's not obnoxious. It's just science. And does that sound right to you? And they went, no. Well, yeah, it's not right to me either. I don't know anything. So we went out, and we bought a bunch of shredders. And we bought 5 levels of them, like little crappy shredders to good ones. And then we gave a prize, and we put it out to the world and said, okay, I have shredded 5 documents, put them together. 34 days later.
Mix the documents together? There were 5 mixed documents?
Yeah, well, so we actually did. So we started, I wanted everyone to get in. So the first one was really simple. You could actually do it by hand. And it was 1 document, and you could do it. And it was really funny because people were like, oh, I'm on my way to $50,000. You're like, well, it is an exponential curve. But, and then the second one, by the 5th document, it was, I think we had 3 pages. It was handwritten. There was a drawing. Okay. It was pretty tough. And we sent it out with no regard of how to solve it. Didn't care how you do it, right? Just trust in people. And it was fascinating. Some people went with crowdsourcing. They said, oh, we'll do it. You know, we've seen you in Red Balloon and things. We'll put together a big thing. But you forget there are bad people out there. So they'd put together the puzzle, and other people would mess up all the pieces.
You didn't put the bad people in, did you?
No, I would not do that. and then another team, right? But this one team came out, and they were actually here in the Bay Area. It was an odd mix, and it was exactly what I mean by spontaneous group. It was this guy who was a video game programmer, and his girlfriend, I think, who worked at Genentech in biology. It was some woman that they had met who at a party who was great at doing puzzles, and 6 of them got together, and they cracked it. And it was awesome because here we have this result. Everyone tells us it's impossible. Here's the puzzle if you want to see it. This is page 3 of the 5th one. So this is how much they put back together. They did it all by software.
How long did it take them to do this?
So to do all 5 puzzles, they submitted it in 34 days. But now they can put, with this now, they can put one back together in about 15 to 20 minutes. It was awesome. And it was really cool. So we invited them in to come and chat. And it was pretty cool to get a bunch of people who don't know anything about the government. They're like, so, I mean, is it okay? Like, you know? And I'm like, yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be free to leave. It's okay. So, they came in, and we brought pizza and Coke, because that's what we do at DARPA. And we all had pizza and Coke, sat around. And all of a sudden, FBI showed up. NSA was there. They became very popular. But yeah, so it was just another really cool thing.
There's this, well, let me finish on the challenge question, because is it right that you haven't had a grand challenge since automobiles, autonomous driving?
Since the 3 cars.
Did you back away from the idea of grand challenges?
No, I don't think not at all. I mean, obviously the new director gets picked. I have to say this all the time or I'm fired. But no, I don't think so. I think they're awesome. But the key is you got to come up, you need an idea that really sparks the imagination of the country. Right, and you want something, at least for me, I think it has to be something that's accessible, right? The coolest thing, I know you were at all the grand challenges, it was really cool to watch Stanford and CMU and well-backed teams win, but my favorite was Little Gray's Insurance. So this was literally this guy, and it was his family car. And I said, gee, this is pretty cool. Like, he goes, yeah, it can't crash because this is the only car we have. And, the fact that they could participate, I think that's, in many ways, that's sort of the strength of what we have, and it's something I want to encourage and get people back into sort of the love of just science and learning and technology. And so yeah, I definitely want to do a big challenge. These are small ones to keep it alive.
Okay.
But if you have a great one,
there's a stockpile of challenges that you guys have got. You have some challenges that are sitting out there that haven't been announced?
We have 3 in our heads that I want to do, but I can't tip it off early, right? Because then you'll be tipping it.
Understood. So there is this notion of DARPA hard problems. You've talked about them. I wanted to ask about one in particular to see where it is on your radar, and particularly because it resonates so much with the history of the Valley, and that is, if you go back to 1964, here, right around Stanford, there were 2 laboratories, both DARPA funded. One was on one side of the Stanford campus, that was John McCarthy's laboratory, and one that was on the other side of Stanford campus, Doug Engelbart's. And one guy wanted to replace the human mind, that was McCarthy. He wanted to build an artificially intelligent machine. If you read his original DARPA project, he thought it was going to take 10 years.
He didn't say starting when.
The other guy, Engelbart, wanted to augment the human mind. And my sense is that tension between replacing and augment has really sort of been the central tension in computing since then. First of all, is AI still one of your big pushes?
Yeah.
And how optimistic are you? You're familiar with the term singularity.
Yeah.
Where do you come down on the question?
That Kurzweil guy is smart, evidently.
Are we close?
Well, no, I don't know that we're close. So I'm a huge fan, and we do it. I definitely come down on the side of augmenting, people. I will fund both because I think it's the future. But I think one of the weird things about technology, and one of the things I want to change sort of before I leave this office, right, is that we have this very odd one-way conversation with technology, right? There's some task we don't want to do. I don't want to add up a bunch of numbers, so I make a calculator, right? And it does it for me. I don't want to search a whole bunch of articles, so I just have Google do it for me. But it's never 2 ways, right? And I want to have 2-way conversations with my technology. And I know that probably puts me in a home somewhere, but nonetheless, I think, so if you think about AI, here's the frustration with AI. People build an AI system, and if you use it, sooner or later, it tells you something stupid, right? Sooner or later, it always tells you something stupid. And then you go, well, that was stupid. Now I can't trust it, and I throw the thing away. Well, you have friends that say stupid things all the time, right? And you don't throw them away. So what's the difference, right? The difference is it's clarification, right? So if I said, hey, hey, I know you're running off to Starbucks. Will you bring me all the coffee at Starbucks? You are unlikely to back up a massive truck. You'll just go, did you want a venti? It's like, yeah, I'm looking for that. So in my view, so I got to tie it to the military because how I look at it. So we have this thing called ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. It's basically sensors looking around at the map. And I imagine in the future, what I want, and we're starting to try to build a little piece of it, is this. So I have all this data. I can't possibly watch it all. And I picture the computer talking to me. Don't freak out, it's not Hal. And he says, hey, Dan, you told me you're interested in crowds of people when they gather. You might want to look at monitor 3. There it is. So I look up, and it's a supermarket. And I'm like, no, it's a supermarket. I'm not interested. And he goes, okay. And then 5 minutes later, I want it to come back to me. And it says, hey, so I know you told me you're not interested in supermarkets. I totally respect that. But you also said you're interested in police cars, and there's a whole lot of police cars there. Are you interested in that? And I say, yeah, I'm interested in that. And if you think about it, we've had a whole Boolean conversation, right? We have programmed this computer to do it. To me, that's sort of, I mean, we can go really crazy. You want to spend 2 minutes go real crazy?
Sure.
All right, so real crazy, here's what I think. And this is not DARPA, this is me. Okay, I think that there's only one resource in the world that you can never grow, right? Which is time. It's the only thing. And you always think, God, if I had more time, there's articles you would read and conferences you would go to and all sorts of stuff. It's the one thing you don't have. So I think when you're born, you should have a baby AI. And I want a little baby AI born with me, and it's going to grow up with me, and it's going to learn everything I'm interested in. And so what I picture is I go to sleep, and then I wake up in the morning, and my AI goes, hey, you know, while you were asleep, I was out at this conference in Beijing. So there's these two guys, they're kind of idiots, but there's this awesome paper, and you ought to read that, and I did this, and I did that, because that's what I want. And to me, that's sort of the future, is it's not AI to replace me, it's AI that partners with me, learns me. So think about search, right? We talk about this all the time. So search, I search, and I get 1,000 hits. Okay, I don't know what I do with that. And then they go, well, it's distillation, right? So you'll put it on the Wikipedia page for me. It's cool, we're doing that too, it's nice. But what I really want is read the 1,000 articles, find the 3 that I would be interested in, highlight the 2 paragraphs I should read, and give me that. Yep. And when I ask a question and you ask a question, we should get different answers. Yeah. So that's what I want.
So we've got some actually good questions here, and some of them were ones that I wanted to ask too, and I haven't gotten to, so I think I'm going to cut over to audience questions.
Cool.
What makes quantum computing so special, and when will we see the first practical quantum computer? And the question I wanted to ask is quantum on your radar?
It is, so it's a great question. I apologize for this answer, but unfortunately, almost everything I do in that realm is classified. So I get it. Yeah, it is a big deal. And
so that would be a yes.
But I can't go further than that. Otherwise, I will. Okay. Like, they put you in penitentiary. They don't play in this role, so.
What is your most strange or amazing experience at DARPA?
I'll tell you the one that honestly got me the most. It's a good friend of mine, program manager, Colonel Jeff Lang, and Jeff is very much a perfect DARPA person. He's an Army colonel. He's a PhD in pharmacology. And a neurosurgeon. You know, not a bad life. And he had this belief, and it's this passionate belief that if we send our young men and women into harm's way and they're injured, they have every right to come back to the life they had. And he means it, no kidding. So I don't know if you know about prosthetics today, but they lose an arm, you pretty much state-of-the-art as a hook. That's what you get. And Jeff said, absolutely not. If you could play piano when you left, we owe you the right to play piano. If you could hold your newborn son, then you will feel and hold that. And we owe that to him. And Jeff started to build it. And I got to see this amazing thing. It was several months ago. There's a young man who's lost both arms. There's a robotic arm that's 10, I don't know, maybe 5 feet from him, not connected in any way at all. And we have a small implant resting on the top of his brain. And with his mind, he could control the arm. Right? That's part one that's cool. So they had a little 3x3 grid, and, you know, touch the upper left, touch the bottom right, and he does all this. And then they're interested in pressure. So the doctor says, you know, push on my hand. And his fiance, who's been with him for the whole time, turns and says, baby, I want to hold your hand. And you think about that statement. It wasn't hold the hand. It was hold his hand. So to me, single best thing at DARPA ever. That, you know, that girl's crying, I'm crying, everybody's crying. You know, it's just amazing. So yeah, like, coolest thing ever.
So your funding made the internet possible. So most people out there think that that's the case. Not everyone, and it will probably be a campaign.
Read the New York Times, not the Wall Street Journal. Is that what we're It's good.
Then it helped self-driving vehicles get to the brink of widespread use.
Yeah.
What's next?
Ooh. What is next? I don't know. So we're doing a lot of really fun things. Things to watch for that are big and public that are fun. Hypersonics is pretty cool. Flying a vehicle at Mach 20. That's pretty cool. So far, it doesn't fly very long. Sort of blew up. But, I love telling that story because I think people missaw that as a failure, and it's absolutely not. It's the core of science. That thing flew longer at that speed than anything in the history of mankind. We have data on what happens, right, in temperatures and plasmas that will move science forward. And so we should just embrace these things. Yeah. And I thought it was really telling. The director of the agency, we gave up Program Manager of the Year and gave it to him. Said, yeah, you were the one up there and it all blew up. You're our guy.
What systems infrastructure and middleware does DARPA use for big data analysis? Is it proprietary or is it open source? That's sort of an interesting.
Oh yeah, that is good. So everything, so two answers to that. So everything we develop, certainly in my shop, everything I do, I make available to the public. Absolutely everything. To the extent I can do it as open source, it's open source, and to the extent it's not, it's all for you to use. So right now, we started off using the stuff that you guys would assume we'd use, Hadoop and Apache and all that sort of normal stuff. We've now developed our own stuff. We're using a lot of really interesting stuff. We're looking at a lot of, this is probably too nerdy, but I'm really interested in the dark spaces of data. So what normally you do for big data is you search an idea. So I know I want to find something, and I look in the data, and I find this geometric pattern. But we almost never go the other way, which is, what's an interesting pattern that's in there, and how does the data talk to me? Right, so how do I just notice things in the data, right, in and of itself? And so we're developing a bunch of code, and once that's done and the military gets their use out of it, which, another year or so, I'll try to harden it up and put it out to the universities and literally, have at it.
Automatic pattern recognition? Is that what you'd call it?
Yeah, yes, but really in sort of in a multi-dimensional data space, right? So you can imagine that, so what does a relationship look like? So, so I've got a bank. So what does a bank look like? So I see certain types of transactions, and I say, okay, so I can recognize that. But then, what if I saw a pattern over here that sort of looks like a bank, but it isn't a bank, and I want to know what that is? So I want data to talk to me.
Got it. Can you talk more about the OS DARPA is funding? Is it cloud computing, supercomputing?
So yes to 1 and 2 and no to 3. So hopefully people amused are, and you can read all about it. This is universities. It's all open. It's all open source. People can have it. So we called it Crash because I thought if you build a new OS, Crash has got to be the best name ever. It stands for like computer resilient hosts or something. So yeah, we're building both hardware and software. We've got the first instantiation of it up and running. The idea is to make, as we talked about, to change things at a low level.
Trustworthy, to make the hardware and the software.
Absolutely. And then we're also doing a parallel program for the cloud. So the DoD is very interested in moving to the cloud, right? And so the thought was, I don't think it's a question of if the cloud gets infiltrated, it's merely a question of when. So the question is, how do we stay up and running? So we call it mission resilient cloud. So how do I deal with graceful degradation? How do I stay up and running to make sure that I can do that even when it's compromised? Because if I have a military commander in harm's way and he gets a little beach ball, that will not be a good call.
So thank you so much.
No problem, man. Awesome.
Before he joined DARPA, Dan Kaufman was a senior executive at the DreamWorks Interactive Studios in Hollywood. Gaming is often at the center of DARPA's future technology. There are hundreds of stories like this at the Computer History Museum. Please join us next time for another episode of Revolutionaries.